Well, good morning, Motion City Church.
Hi.
I may have misled you. So here's the thing, Motion City. We did not actually pay the ransom money yet. We had a wire transfer failure. So Pastor Steve is still in Florida.
Still here.
If you can't tell by the non-whiteness of the scenery.
The absence of snow.
We had to move our cars this morning. That's how much it snowed.
Oh, wow. Everything's
right.
in my drive. I am not excited about seeing when I get back.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Well, we are here. Coming off of the last series, we thought we were going to be able to. Well, let's be honest. We thought we messed up the dates and thought that we were going to be able to record this week, and then thought about it, and we're like, no, we can't.
Yeah,
because you're still in Florida. And then that created a snowball to where we were like, oh no, we need to find something to do this week.
Mm-hmm. And I was working on the message and it just, and again, getting into a series on the love of God, it seems like it would just be the easiest thing to talk about.
Because God is love.
Because yes, and it became, I don't know, it became something that I was not anticipating, is emotionally and all that stuff. And so I was talking to Matt, and I just said, I'm not going to do something that's not good. I'm not going to do something that's not as well prepared as I want it to be, as our community deserves. But you know, this series, and specifically the message that you're going to hear next week, it evokes some very raw emotions within me that I'm still processing through. And we'll probably continue to process through as I work on the message, as we record it this upcoming week, getting ready for next weekend. But I just needed to be a little more present in what I was preparing and studying, and to make sure that it was theologically correct, correct with my emotions. And so, yeah, it was. I mean, when I called Pastor Matt, I was just like, I am so surprised at the emotions that are being evoked right now. And so, I'm not going to do something that's not going to be good. And so, and I was not in a good place. It was weird. It was so weird.
Yeah. It's wild how much of the conversation is just it just brings out those emotions, like you said, because like you said at the beginning, you think love. Oh, that's easy. Like, we can just talk about love. But then you get into the nitty gritty of it, and it's love brings out the emotions in you of, oh man, I don't deserve this, and I really messed up when I gave it to other people. So yeah.
Totally. And it was, and again, the personal Rolodex of my life was flipping through of just these painful things that I was experiencing. And then all of a sudden the Rolodex came through of the painful experiences that I put people through in like the name of God. And it was just like this, I know. And again, it kind of the root of everything that we know about God and experience with God is that he is love. And so again, this should be simple, but then there's just this human component that I bring along with it that I was, not prepared to deal with, which, you know, is sort of, you know, I should have. It's not like this has ever been a surprise that God is working all these things, but this was something where I was like, I just was not prepared, just to experience the emotions that I was feeling. So, yeah,
that was so to go back for a second, that was something I was in. Well, we planned these things out.
Yeah.
When did we plan this out? I don't remember when it was in November.
We sat through and really started hashing through a lot of ideas because Maybe some people are surprised to hear that, but like we actually do plan this stuff out. We actually are intentional
wild.
about. I know, right? Like we want to make sure we know what we're getting into, and we really like, you know, Pastor Jen and myself and Pastor Matt, Pastor Blake, we really want to remain open to the leading of the Lord as throughout the year, but really want to, like, God, what do you want to speak to us this year? What do you want to say to us as a community this year? And so we do plan these things out very pretty well in advance. And
well, I mean, we plan them out, but what's funny, and I just, because I have a place in my mind to like take us, and there, even this, I know this seems random, but there's a plan up here that to take us on a path through these things in our conversation.
Yeah.
And so just the idea, like we planned to pull back the curtain a little bit. We planned last year after the pandemic hit, we were like, okay, this is going to take a lot more production, which means that I need to have some more information, because I need to be able to have these elements in place so that when that series comes up, we're not scrambling for graphics. Because we do graphics in the front, the middle, all throughout. Like those are there. We try to keep them cohesive, try to make it look pretty for you all. And let's be honest, it's really for me. I want it to look pretty, and then everyone else gets to benefit. But we had planned on coming out of the summer doing Ruth.
Yeah.
And then we kept talking about Amos. And then it was like, well, guess we're going to switch those two around. Which was perfect, because then last week with Romans 8, I was able to call back to Ruth, which was two series prior. And it just all kind of tied in together. So you weren't missing anything, but the cohesiveness of it was increased. Yeah. And then coming out of last week with the end of Romans 8 being all about God's love, we wanted to flow into this week with how he loves. I think we had picked the series, and then it was like, oh, we need to move it up here. This is too perfect.
It's too
to roll.
Yeah. and again, last year was last year was last year. We all were there, and again, it was so amazing just how through our planning, and again, just being available and open to hearing what God would want to say to us, that like he was really speaking to us in a timely manner, just all the things that we were experiencing as a culture and as a country and as a world. And again, it was just kind of one of those, we never want to get in the way of the things that God would speak, God would want to say. But again, we want to make sure we have that plan. We definitely, I think that there's a very fine line between faith and foolishness. And I think sometimes I know that I have been one to err on the side of foolishness and calling it faith. And we have faith that God is going to lead us in the right directions, but we want to make sure that we have a plan put in place so that we know where we're going, that we know what we're studying, again, that we're putting our best effort and intentions forward. And yeah, so coming out of Romans 8, it was just like this perfect, like, oh yeah, we'll just move how he loves up. Yeah. And then listening to Pastor Matt's message, and again, feeling inspired to like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about God's love. This is great. And then I got into it, and I was just like, it was just like this cavalcade of
so excited. And then it's like emotion.
Yeah. Totally. And then and all of a sudden I hit with just this, weirdly enough, just this dread of, and just remembrance of experiences that make, for me, experiencing the love of God very difficult. And at times and throughout my life, and I'm going to get into that as I'm working through the message, but at the same time too, I don't think it would be honest if I didn't, bring to light some of those things of where I've missed it. I've missed truly extending God's love in the way that God has to me. And I've missed the mark so many times when it comes to other people, and I'm trying to do it better and trying to be better when it comes to that. But, and truly like being an extension of God's love, his perfect love. And, but yeah, it was, again, I was super excited. I was inspired. And then all of a sudden I was just dreading it and walking through the emotions. And it was, and so we talked and we just like, you know what, maybe we'll do something a little different this week. And so
let's take it back to Romans 8.
Yeah.
We just finished Romans 8. What was your favorite part of that whole series?
Favorite part of Romans 8, and that was the thing. I loved the message on suffering. I really did love the message on suffering because, again, it's one of those things that we are able to identify with, because if we're human, we're going to suffer. I think the part that connected most with me just in those moments was I think week 2, when we talked about adoption and this idea that, that truly, like, we are adopted into the family of God, that God through Christ invites us in, and not because of the things that we can do for him, simply just because, again, he loves us. And I think the week on adoption was the one that was, for me, I think continues to permeate and work through my soul, of just these moments where I get caught in, like, even just the idea of not having an official message ready. It was just kind of one of those, like, oh, I'm letting God down. I'm not performing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let go. He's going to let me out, and all these, and just having that reminder of no. He doesn't love me because of what I do. He doesn't love me because I can preach messages, or because we planted a church or pastor a church. He doesn't love me for any of that. He loves me simply because I'm me, and I'm his creation, and I have been adopted through Christ. And so, again, it was just like, even this week, I was being reminded of that. So,
yeah, I was once I took out my part, and we got to Romans 17, and I looked at it and I was like, well, I mean, the thing is, in so many of Paul's letters, there's those like connection sentences, and you're just like, well, this should have went with the previous section. And then you look at it and you're like, no, it needs to go with this section. No, this is right in the middle. It probably should have been both weeks. So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the first week, just because of the difficulty us having the conversations about the passage. Looking at, I remember we were sitting there and we were looking at the New Living Translation, which is usually what we're
preach
using.
From.
Right.
Yeah.
It flows really well. And then to see there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus because sin was condemned in the flesh. And then to notice that wasn't in the New Living Translation. And like, I just got so frustrated because like this, like the wordplay here is so amazing, and we're just, we lose it because I don't know. I don't know why. Because somebody didn't like the word condemn. I don't know. we were totally
on board to film 2 messages in 1 week. And then we kind of, I told, when I was driving home, I called Jen and I was like, I think Matt and I got into like our first like legitimate sort of like heated conversation as to like, the wording of this thing. And she goes, you were gone for like a really long time. And I was like, I know, because most of it was us like trying to figure out like the tense of this word and everything. And it was, and again, it's one of those, continual reminders of like, oh yeah, we have plans, but
right. And then we pulled out the King James version to get carnal, which no one saw coming. No one in 2020 or 2021 saw carnal making a comeback, but here we are.
Carnality. I know.
Who knew? All right. So then going forward, I have it over here on screen number 2. I'm not going to pull it to screen number 1 because, again, the behind the scenes here inside baseball, it would be very confusing if it was to be on where you guys are looking right now. But our first message of the series is Jesus the Good Shepherd, and talking about him in John, and then specifically with the juxtaposition kind of John is looking at Ezekiel 34, talking about the people who are bad shepherds. what were some thoughts? I mean, I know you're in the middle of sermon prep, and I don't want you to to give away everything. But what are some things that you are noticing there?
The biggest piece that stuck out to me, and this will definitely be a spoiler as to, not a spoiler, I mean, whatever, it's in the Bible, you can read it yourself. But just Jesus's response in John 10, 1 through 21, that we're going to be looking at much more in depth next week. I mean, it's a phenomenal passage of scripture, but what it is it's something that's in direct response to a great thing that the church got wrong. And John 10, 1 through 21, this is Jesus responding to a moment where a blind man was healed on the Sabbath.
Right.
And the religious leaders at the time discounted the healing because it was done on the Sabbath, but then they also discounted the healing because it didn't make sense to them. Jesus' disciples even talked about the fact that, they asked the questions of Jesus as to why this man was born blind, and they immediately connected it to the fact that it's probably because his family sinned or they did something wrong, ergo God brought about a punishment on the life of this person. And Jesus is very quick to rebuke that and say, no, it's not because his family sinned, but the reason this man was born blind was ultimately that's so the power of God could be revealed in this moment. And Jesus heals the man and he can see. And because it wasn't familiar, Jesus's authority and his character and who he was gets brought into question. And then, the man speaks and essentially validates Jesus as being from God, because who could do this other than somebody from God? And then what really brought about a lot of the things that I'm going through right now is that he was kicked out of church, and the man was kicked out of church because he was healed. And then he validated the divinity of Jesus, and it brought up in me just a lot of past pain, again, that I've walked through, but that at the same time, I've also past pain that I've also dealt to other people. Again, I think that God is so continually working on me in so many aspects. Probably too many to mention in one Facebook Live experience, but it was just one of those moments where all of a sudden I realized, man, for so much of my early ministry, I was more concerned about the place that I was pastoring more than the people that God had called me to pastor.
Yeah.
I was
that's a young minister's I don't know if it was something that was missed when we were like being trained, or if it just came naturally. Those things when you're really good at something and things just come naturally to you, you don't realize that doesn't come naturally to other people. You know what I mean? I've said this before, but my whole family is, on my mom's side, is very coordinated. Like, we all played sports, like maybe not super high level, but no one had to teach me how to throw a baseball. Yeah. Right. I just threw a baseball. Yeah. So I take it for granted, and I can't teach someone how to throw a baseball because you just do it. Yeah, exactly. Comes along Hadley, who cannot throw a baseball. She did not inherit that thing from my side. And so you get to this place of like, well, I don't know how to tell you how to do it. I just did it. Like, that was just me. And so to take that forward, I promise I'm going somewhere.
I never have a doubt, Matt. This I never have a doubt.
Sometimes I do. With pastors, especially the previous generation, like my dad was just good with people, and he understood that pastoring people was important.
Yeah.
But he never passed that on to me. Not because he didn't think it was important to pass that on to me, but just because it was so natural to him. Why would I have to pass that on? And I feel like that's the way for a lot of young ministers. It's, you know, as you get older and you realize, oh, this is less about the place and much more about the people that God has put around me and under me. And under me is a strong word, but I like around me better. Like that's just, this is who I'm supposed to care for. This is what I'm doing. This is it. And by the time you figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, so I can settle into this rhythm. And sometimes we forget to tell those who are a little bit younger.
No, absolutely. I think, and again, so when you made the mention of the people around me and under me, the phrase that came to my mind is, as pastors, the people that God has entrusted us to shepherd. And even using that word shepherd, again, brings up just a lot of that, of just kind of what we're looking at next week, of that Jesus is the good shepherd. And what type of shepherd am I being as a pastor? Am I shepherding people like Jesus would, or am I what Jesus refers to in the passage as simply just a hired hand that it simply looks at the place and the people as a stepping stone into something next, where all of a sudden another opportunity comes and they bail, or when tragedy strikes, they're nowhere to be found. And again, if I'm called to shepherd a community of faith and a community that where God has placed us, if I need to do it in the way that reflects Jesus more than reflects, like, the church name, or just, you know what I mean? Or just the denomination, any of that stuff. And like, if it's more about something other than Jesus, then I'm shepherding poorly. And
oh, good.
Okay, no, go ahead.
I got a book as part of one of my classes. I can't remember if it was, I feel like it was the graduate level class, called They Smell Like Sheep. And I remember looking at it and being like, this is a stupid book. And then I started reading it, and I had judged the book by its cover entirely. And I was like, oh no, this is a great book. But I did. And it's just talking about how real shepherds smell like sheep because they're around them. And
Absolutely.
so real pastors are those who are around those who they're pastoring, which is has been very difficult for the past 9 months. I guess we're going on 11 now, 12?
11 months.
Sure.
But just because it's hard doesn't mean that, and I just was convicted of this probably a month ago, of just all the reality of, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's impossible. And so for people who are a part of our community, just so you everybody here, just, I'm going to do a much better job until we are able to safely meet back in person. I'm just going to do a better job, because again, it may be more difficult, it may be more time consuming, but it's not impossible. And so, and again, it's just one of those moments that, again, the Lord has just been functioning in this mode of conviction for me. And again, I'm not fearful of the conviction, because the conviction is actually the invitation to pull me back into the way of Jesus. We spent some time in a series called The Way of Jesus, and conviction is ultimately God's grace in inviting me back into the way of righteousness, into the way of Him. And so just because it's more difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. And I've gotten to touch base with some people in the past few weeks, and it's just been such a joy. And so I'm going to do that more, because Motion City, I love you guys, and miss you terribly. And but again, it's just these moments of like, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. It's not impossible.
See, this is where we're different. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about most of you. So,
and by most of you, he means me and Jen still. So.
All right. Well, we should continue in our conversation, and then let's do some more inside baseball here. Man, I do not like the passage that we've got on tap for week 2. Can I say that out loud? I don't know what that means or if we're going to change it, but we've got God loves like a father.
Mm-hmm.
And the passage is the prodigal son.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've heard me rant and rave, the prodigal son narrative is about. Let's be clear. It's going to be great because the father's going to be Jesus is clearly the father in the story. But the prodigal son story is, to me, more about the older son than the younger son. Just because, especially where we are in church.
It ties to all three of them in such a unique way that, and again, I would say much more. The father is it's easy to identify this as Jesus. The younger son is easy to identify as us at times. And then there's the older son that is also the one that we don't like to identify as ourselves at some times. And it's one of those, again, I would agree that the narrative that is most often missed is the narrative of the older son, which for us becomes when we become religiously minded towards those who come to experience the love of Christ. And we begin to put up those parameters as well. They haven't taken the membership class. They haven't signed on the dot. And all of a sudden we make the love of Jesus attainable just as long as they look and function and feel like us. And so it's such a, yeah.
Yes. And it's incredible. One book on the prodigal son, if you've never read it, is Henry Nouwen's The Return of the Prodigal Son. It's a theological reflection on Rembrandt's painting. So I can move in a little bit there. And we have here the Return of the prodigal here, the father here, and the older son on the other side. And he makes some artistic,
looking moody.
Yes, imagine that. And it's a beautiful painting by Rembrandt, and he makes some artistic stuff. But then he goes in the final chapter is becoming the father, and talking about how all of this being, if God is love, and this is how he loves us, this is how we should love others. And he talks about how we can become more like the Father, inviting everyone to the table, whether they're cynics, like the older brother, whether they're seekers and searchers, like the younger brother. And it's a really good book. And the sermon prep notes that we have mentions it as well. So I'm just plugging it out there. I was going to see if I could find a good passage to read, but alas, I could not. That's my fault. I love the story. It's one of my favorite parables. If you look at Luke 15, it starts with the scribes and Pharisees, and then we have the 1 to 99, where Jesus leaves the 99 to find the one. And then we have the 1 to 9, where Jesus tells the parable of the woman who has 10 coins, but she lost one. So 99 to 1, 9 to 1, and then you go down to 2 to 1. So one son is lost, one son is there, and it's really good. I enjoy Luke 15 as a whole. Anything else that we missed that we should talk about while we're talking about this one?
No, And again, I don't want to dismiss when we get into the relational components that there are not complexities that exist when it comes to familiar relationships. And oftentimes, I'm so guilty of bringing in my experiences with other people when it comes to how often we in the church refer to the love of God. You know, oftentimes we're much more consistent with referring to the love of God as a father loves a child. And I don't want to be dismissive in the fact that I'm sure that there are plenty of complicated relationships between fathers and siblings. Yeah. And we bring those complications into our perspective.
Absolutely.
I do. And so it's the challenge continues to be, how can I see God for who God truly is, and not limit God to the experiences that I've experienced. I think that is such a it's a difficulty, but it's a necessity.
Right. And there's there's the trope among ministers when we get to Mother's Day and we're all applauding mothers, then we get to Father's Day and we're all beating fathers down. But the truth is that the call to fathers in their role as father is high because of the language that Jesus uses. And so as Christian fathers, there's a need to exemplify, to just like a pastor and is that shepherd and is meant to show that love of Jesus. The same is true of fathers and their attempt to show that love. So it's important for that reason. I think I want to say.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, 100%. I would 100% agree.
And then the next week, we have what will be the most controversial sermon of the year.
Probably
Maybe not. I don't know,
Maybe
man.
not,
I don't remember what else we have this year.
I was looking over the calendar, and it gets intense at certain points throughout the year.
Is it going to get dicey in Philippians? I don't know.
Yeah, that was not the one that I was just like, oh, that'll be fun. I remember saying that out loud, like alone, like, oh, that's going to be fun. I just can't remember which one it was.
I'm glad we chose that. It's going to be great. This one is God Loves Like a Mother.
Yep.
Which
I believe Pastor Jen is preaching.
Oh, that'll be great.
So I believe she's preaching that one.
Did she just find out about that, or did you tell
No,
her?
we had a long drive down, and we were talking about it. So
that's a good one. Yeah,
she actually said so. She just said so. Which week am I preaching? And I was like, that's a different tone.
We're getting the right direction here.
Yeah, she's so good.
It's gonna be great. I mean, I'm super excited about it. The idea of God loving like a mother shouldn't be controversial, as Jesus says, "I wish to gather you underneath."
I never heard about it growing up.
Yeah,
never heard about it.
I mean, this also leans into how often I listen to the sermons. So maybe that was part of the problem, but yeah, no, I don't remember. But like when Jesus says, "I wish to gather you under my wings," like a mother hen gathers her chicks, and we see it here in this passage that we're going to look at. It seems as if the way that God loves us would be both father and mother.
Yeah,
but it just, I don't know why there's a mental block there. You know what I mean?
Totally. And again, I'm not gonna to say that I've got it figured out, because again, it's stretching my capacity as far as what I've thought and how I've thought for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm not even preaching the message, but I'm definitely studying in on it so that I can better understand. Because again, if these are the words that Jesus speaks, then they're definitely words that I should pay attention to. And if this is an example in which he compares himself to, then there's definitely something to it that, again, that I have not understood. And in so doing, again, there's the conviction of, have I limited my outlook as to how I see others and their effectiveness when it comes to ministry. And again, hopefully not. Hopefully God has been continually working on me when it comes to that. But again, it's nothing. I mean, God loving like a mother was never something that I remember hearing about growing up in church and going to Bible college and all this stuff. And it was just never this thing. It was never that comparison of how God can love us. And so I would say out of all the weeks, I'm most not anxious, anticipating of that one, because my pen and paper will be out. I'm ready to learn.
Well, and for anyone who, I can imagine that some people are listening to this or watching this and they're like, are you guys sure about that? And I would point you back to Genesis 2 when God creates Adam and then he creates Eve and gives them both life. And then Adam says, well, this is Eve. And what is Eve in Hebrew? It's life. So we have man and life, like Adam and Eve. And so Adam clearly understands that this life-giving essence is God and this woman that he has been connected to. So it's there on page 2. It just takes a little bit of a looking, and I'm really excited about Isaiah. Isaiah is one of those we talked about before last summer. We were in the 7 series. We were talking about Revelation and how that's a book that can get avoided.
Yeah, a lot of newer pages in the Bible when you get to Lamentations and you get to Revelation. Those are some some still new pages in Bibles.
Yeah, and Isaiah, it feels like sometimes from the preacher's perspective, like it's somewhere where we go to like pull something from the servant song, or we'll talk about it during Advent, like we have the Wonderful Counselor. But then like the rest of Isaiah, it's like, oh, it's there too. And so I'm excited that we're pulling this one from there. You know what I mean?
It's there too.
There are how many chapters we pulled from 4? Yeah, I think it'll be great.
Oh, that's really funny. Sounds like me when I was getting picked for dodgeball in elementary school. Oh, and he's here too.
He can stand.
Or soccer. Oh, he's built like a goalie. He should be a goalie. Man,
I couldn't. Soccer was not. Oh, we played lots of soccer when I was a kid, but I'm glad that I didn't go into that sport, because I would have been the kid falling over when he got kind of touched to make sure that I got the call, kind of thing. The important part of soccer.
You need those people.
You gotta have them. So our final sermon is gonna come back. It's gonna hit home, mainly because we've already done this series, and that is God's loving relationship with His people is like a husband who never gives up on his wife. And it has this passage. I don't know if you've heard of this book. Maybe you've preached on it before, Pastor Steve. But it's Hosea chapter 2. Verses 14 through 23.
I love Hosea.
There's no book quite like it.
No, it is. It stands alone in many things, and I think we did. If I remember correctly, it was the most controversial within our team at the time sermon series title, which was "So I Married a Prostitute," and.
Which now seems tame, but
totally, I know. It was like, but it was, and again, Hosea as a book is overwhelming in its explanation of God's love for us through the relationship of Hosea and Gomer, and it's one of those like. I get done reading it at times, or I get done reading passages, and it feels almost like I've like done a Peloton workout where I'm just like, whew, it's just like, but I mean, it is. And if you've never read the entirety of the book of Hosea, like, I want to encourage everybody before we even get there. I mean, read Hosea, get involved in Hosea, because it is remarkable and life-giving and so challenging, but like just the continued pursuit of Hosea towards his wife, who is not like accidentally unfaithful, who is active in her unfaithfulness to her husband, and yet Hosea continues to love her and pursue her because God says this is your wife. This is the one in whom you are going to love. And he just, I mean, I can't even imagine what he went through socially and all those things as he continued to pursue and buy back his wife out of, I mean, it was just, it just gives me goosebumps even just talking about it.
And all of these, this is the one that's most, especially with Hosea, it's just that to go back to the chesed idea, like it just encapsulates it so much.
Yeah.
And God especially saying like, this is what Israel's like. And she turns away from me over and over and over and over. And yet I keep coming back to her. I keep redeeming her. I keep saving her from the afflictions. I keep doing these things.
Yeah.
Even though she decides to follow others.
Continues to choose to be unfaithful. And again, I think
there's a word for that, but I don't know if any children are watching. So
yeah, I think that oftentimes, I think we're very easy to identify the love of the Savior of the New Testament, and oftentimes I can have a tendency, and I've had that tendency. I'm trying not to, but I think again, when we went through the Bible in a year with Brotherhood, and then we went through the Bible in a year as a community, again, just the love of the God of the Old Testament towards the people of Israel is so jaw-dropping, because they love him, they wander away, they're in rebellion, he brings them back, he restores them. Like, I mean, just this continual pursuit of the people of Israel throughout the Old Testament is such, I mean, again, I think we can have a tendency of looking at God in the Old Testament as being vengeful and angry, and but who God is in the Old Testament is a God who is passionately in love with his people.
Yeah.
So passionately in love with his people that he will continue to bring them back into right relationship. When again, we look, if it was simply up to me, it's like, okay, I'll maybe do it. Okay, 2 times. All right. The ice is getting thin. 3 times. Like, here's the deal. Like, fool me once, you know what I mean? Like one of those. And again, I have to remove my perception of love when it comes to looking at the love of God, because my love fails so miserably in comparison to his love for me and for us. And just, again, seeing over and over and over how he continues to pursue and bring back. And then again, through the book of Hosea, through the story of Hosea and Gomer, again, just puts it in such a phenomenal perspective. And again, I think so often I would like to look at myself as Hosea, but in all honesty, I am so Gomer, and we are so Gomer. So it's like, it's if I'm going to look at myself through any perspective, I have to look at the one through the adulteress or the adultering spouse. And and that's not a fun place to be. But
that's unflattering.
Again, it's very unflattering, and it's like me wearing any color that's not black. It's very unflattering, and but at the same time, though, it is true, and simply because it's unflattering doesn't mean that we ignore it. And because again, God's love as the husband loving us as the church. I mean, and us as it's just crazy. So yeah. I'm really excited about that. When we were putting all of our stuff together, and then got to Hosea, I got real excited. I was really excited because I love that.
Well, I put in the chat, doesn't even have any questions, and it's going to take a second for my voice to get there. But hopefully, if anyone does have any questions, we'll give you a couple minutes to get those in. I can't promise we'll answer them. I can't even promise we'll respond to them, but they'll be there. I don't know. Does that make you feel better? I don't know. And then after this, we're going into Lent. We got Easter's right around the corner. It feels like we just started this year, but also I'm in various places planning for 2022, which is terrifying.
Yeah, it's wild. Like we just got out of something, just walked into something, and now it feels like we're almost out of something again. But we'll see.
It's a different world.
I just keep saying it's been a long year this week.
Yeah, no, I mean it still feels that way. We're not even a month in, and it feels like this year's already been 4.
It's true. It's true.
We'll give it another minute to see if
Yeah.
anybody has any questions.
Either we did everything just so well that nobody has any questions, or
they're so confused.
yeah,
They have all the questions. Which, let's be honest, both of them are possible. Oh, I gotta go out. I had Hadley shovel the driveway, not the driveway, the sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
But that means I'm gonna have to go out and redo it because, you know,
she could surprise you.
that's what 12-year-olds do. They do it as well as they need to. We have a question, mainly because you know
Who's
what,
from?
Danelle. Let's be honest, we love you dearly.
Danelle.
Because here's the thing. I don't know if you actually have this question or if you're just putting this question in here because you feel like we need a question. But either way, we greatly appreciate it. And
Love you, Danelle.
both ways are good. And it's will we do any more Facebook Lives like this? Who knows?
Maybe.
It's possible.
I think I'll be honest, when it comes to my conversations in my own head and the conversations that Pastor Jen and I have, and then the conversations that Pastor Jen, myself, Pastor Matt, Pastor Blake have, trying to figure out a way in which to do a few things differently this year. I think that how we have been able to continue to be in community, whether it's through the messages and worship, I don't want to in any way talk down to that, because it's been, but I do feel like there is something needs to change in how we are able to. I want people to community aspect that again, just how, because again, being portable and not having a place to meet yet, and just and because Minnehaha's chapel that we were meeting in is now 3 temporary classrooms, and that's we're in no way we're in no way upset about that. But there's just the uniqueness that exists when it comes to being continuing to be portable. But I think that there are some things that we are thinking through and talking about to make opportunities more engaging than simply just watching myself, Pastor Jen, Pastor Blake, Pastor Matt on a video in your living room. So trying to figure out, but as far as nailing down like a specific example, I'm not sure. This was just a fun thing that we had been talking about doing, and this worked out to be the week that we were able to pull the trigger on something. And so maybe, but the wheels are turning for at how we can just be more interactive when it comes to a community of faith, because again, 11 months has been a really, really long time to not be together. And so trying to figure out how that's going to look this year is still, the wheels are working, and some ideas are percolating. One idea maybe has been brought to life, but I don't want to say anything about that simply just because we just haven't gotten a thumbs up on an idea yet. So, because things change, but know that there will be things like this, I would say, happening more in the future, but we just can't really lay down this is going to be a weekly thing or a monthly thing even. But I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah. And to go, again, inside baseball, behind the curtain, or talking about throwing a baseball. These are all conversations, guys, that I understand that a lot of people aren't privy to the conversations we have. We've talked about how can we do a Facebook Live service? How can we do that? Mm-hmm. And there are a lot more obstacles than you might think to do a service that way.
Like obstacles financially. I mean, as far as if
location. There's so many things, and we've tried to work through them. We've come up with certain things that we could do here and there. Logistics are just in this time have been zero fun. We've also looked at other churches. A lot of the stuff, let's be honest, we steal things from Scott Waller all the time. Corner does amazing things.
Oh, and happy 15th birthday to Corner Church.
Oh,
15 years old this weekend. Scott and Amber, who lead that community. We I don't even think love is a strong enough word. We adore them, their family.
We have chesed for them.
Oh my gosh, so much chesed. And but it's their 15-year anniversary this weekend, so we just wanted to say quick, being that you brought up Scott, happy birthday to Corner Church. We love you guys, to be your friends and be in community. But continue, sorry.
No, they've allowed us to use our facilities to shoot.
Yeah, it's where we record and
turns out when it's really cold outside, it's difficult to record sermons.
Filming outside is a struggle, and yeah, they have allowed us to very graciously use their building, use their downtown location to film, and yeah. So I mean, again, it's. I think
we've talked about that. When you look at Corner, they do a service via Zoom to do the sermon. It's something we've thrown around. But we haven't pulled the trigger again because of just the logistics of everything. We've talked about different things, so I understand completely being someone who just doesn't get to be a part of those conversations and think, why are we doing the same thing over and over again? And we don't enjoy doing the same thing over and over again. I don't know if you've met us. We like to do different things. We like to mix it up. We like to see what's different.
Yeah.
And we've just gotten into a place where it's not perfect, but it's working right now. And we are actively considering, what else can we do? So don't feel discouraged if you're out there. We're there with you.
Yeah, we're there. And again, we're trying to actively seek some solutions. We don't want to be reactionary. We want to respond appropriately as opposed to react. I have lived a lot of my ministry life in reactionary mode, and it's not fun. And so we want to respond well. Also, to kind of just, again, do some inside baseball, a little bit behind the curtain. All of us as pastors on staff, we're all bivocational. We all work jobs outside of Motion City. Our passion is Motion City. Our passion is this community. But I think kind of understanding who God's called us to be as we're continuing to work through and continuing to dissect who God's called us to be, how he's called us to pastor, how he's called us to serve our community. One of the decisions we did make was we were going to be bivocational. We were going to have roots run deep in the community that at a point the church was not allowing us to do. I was painting different places full time and all these different things, and so we've made the choice to be bivocational. We want to make sure that we are a generous church. We don't want and part of that desire to be generous moved us into making that decision of being bivocational. And so I'm not making excuses for anything, but I'm just giving you guys a real look into how we do things where, when the four of us meet, it's usually on a Zoom call or a socially distance opportunity, usually at night once kids are asleep and all these different, we don't leave our homes. We don't leave our kids unattended while they sleep. So that's usually a Zoom call. But
we generally don't do that.
We film messages in the evening once we're off of work. And so, again, not making excuses, but just bringing a real perspective into how we do things. And so, again, things are in motion. We're having conversations as to how we can do things differently this year. So those things are happening. But again, there's a lot of logistics that come into that, like Pastor Matt said. And so,
yeah, it's really hard to innovate when you're treading water. And that's kind of where we've been to a certain extent. We want to, like I said, we want to innovate. We've had the conversations about what can we do differently? How can we do differently? What are we, like, those are conversations we've had, but sometimes it feels as if the water gets to right here and you're just like, okay, I can make it. And that's how it's been a couple times this year. With Pastor Steve getting emails at 12:30 of me finishing the upload of the sermon, and when I say 12:30, I mean a.m. on Sunday. So it's just, that's what it is, and so it's difficult to move those forward when you're in the middle of it sometimes.
Yeah,
that, my friends, is vulnerability right there.
So I don't know if that was your question, Danelle, but thanks for it. And but no, there's I mean, I've enjoyed this. Hopefully people have enjoyed it. And so maybe we'll do more stuff like this.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Who knows?
After we talked about how we like to be planned out. That's funny.
We live in the perfect world of planning and then immediately blowing up those plans to
do something
else. Yeah. All right. Well, we're just coming up on an hour, so I feel like that's been a good amount of time.
That's enough time.
Yeah.
That's
we'll
enough
post this to YouTube, and that way people can watch it on double speed and get through it quicker.
There you go. But Motion City, we love you. I love you guys. Pastor Jen and I love you. We miss you. And next week we'll dive into officially week 1.5 of How He Loves, looking at Jesus the Good Shepherd. So real excited about that.
Yep. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm not going to say who looks at the Facebook messages, but somebody does pretty well do those things. And it's not me, because I don't look at them very well, but the person who does. And so if you need something, reach out via that way or email somebody.
Yep.
We're around.
Instagram message. Yeah. I'll or just text us. Most of y'all have our numbers. Just text us.
Yeah. And if you don't, text Pastor Steve. All right. We'll see you guys later.
There you go. Bye.